गुरुमिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगनः ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगे राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्ति विघ्न विनाश नरसिंह नामिने। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनि नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supermost human beings, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadev, the author. नास्तप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भागवते उत्तमश्लोकैर्भक्तिर्भवतीर्नैष्टिकी. By regular attendance in classes of the on the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं सुखमुखादमृतद्रव्य संयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandadaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Nama Pankajanaabhaya, Nama Pankajamaline, Nama Pankajanetraya, Namaste Pankajandri. So, Mukam Karoti Vachalam, Pangam Langaitim Girim Yatkripa, Tamaham Vande, Sri Guru Dinatarinam, Paramananda Madhavam, Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram Om Tatsat. So, Hare Krishna, everybody. So, welcome back to our Srimad Bhagavatam narrations. So we are doing chapter 18, Maharaj Parikshit cursed by a Brahmana boy. So today we are doing part 3, and I hope to finish the chapter today. So just going through the subtopics of this chapter, we began with Mahabhagavata Parikshit's Mahabhagyam, how Parikshit Maharaj was introduced as a Mahabhagavata. a great devotee, an extremely great devotee of the Supreme Lord, and how he was extremely fortunate, Mahabhagyam. So, and why he was extremely fortunate? Because he had the fortune to be directly saved by the Supreme Lord himself, and therefore he became known as Vishnu Rata, one who is saved by Vishnu. And also because he was a fully surrendered devotee to the Lord. So that's another reason. So then we also heard about how Maharaj Parikshit kept Kali in check. So some of his activities, his great pastimes and activities were discussed. So we've heard already how the Kali was checked. You know, he was destroying the legs of Dharma, and how expertly Maharaj Parikshit was able to keep Kali in check. And then while Suta Goswami was narrating these pastimes to the assembled sages of the Naimisaranya forest, the sages were very, they were very enthused to hear more and more. So the particular word was used, sushrusatam. Sushrusatam. Sushrusatam means very anxious. So they wanted to hear more and more. So therefore they expressed their sushrusatam to hear more about the pastimes of the Supreme Lord and the devotees. So it was discussed, they wanted to hear about the Bhagavata. Bhagavata here refers to the devotee, the Supreme Lord, and also the instructions of the Supreme Lord. And then Sutta Goswami, after hearing the enthusiasm of the sages, so then he also spoke that that indeed this request is very wonderful, because purification begins by Shravanam of Krishna's unlimited qualities. So, and then he went on from 1818 to 1823. We discussed this also. And then we talked about the narration of the incident for the cursing of Maharaj Parikshit. So 2 weeks ago, we discussed how the cursing of how Maharaj Parikshit became cursed. So this is basically a pastime of the Lord, right? And we discussed this, how Shringi, the son of the Brahmana, was cursing Maharaj Parikshit because Maharaj Parikshit was traveling, and then he was very fatigued and very thirsty, and he came to the hermit, the hermitage of of Samika Rishi, and Samika Rishi was in meditation, and Maharaj Parikshit felt that Samika Rishi did not receive him properly, so he left. And then when he left, he was angry, and then he took a snake, a date snake. There was a date snake along the road. He took it and put it on the neck of Samika Rishi, who was still in meditation. So after what do you call, this incident happened, then the son Shringi became, here's a picture. We saw how, while leaving the king, being so insulted, picked up a lifeless snake with his bow and angrily placed in the shoulder of the sage. Then he returned to his palace. And then, upon returning, he began to contemplate and argue within himself whether the sage had actually been in meditation with sense concentrated and eyes closed, or whether he had just been pretending to be in trance to avoid receiving a lower person. So it's amazing how Maharaj Parikshit, who is described as Mahabhagavata and Vishnurata and Mahabhagyam, could think in this manner, which is like a person who is within the three modes. So we also discussed this to some extent, how such a situation is not an ordinary situation. It was not possible for Maharaj Parikshit to feel this way and to think this way. So it was understood, the Acharyas explained, and also even Maharaj Sutta Goswami and all the verses in the Bhagavatam also describe the same thing, that it was done simply due to the will of the Lord. So when the Lord wants something to happen, right, he has many ways to make it happen. So one of the ways he does it is he uses his Yoga Maya Shakti. So the Yoga Maya Shakti will cover, and he uses his devotees as instruments, so to pass his point. So he has various reasons one of the reasons is to glorify his devotee. Another reason, of course, in this case, is to present the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we discussed this already previously. So this week we will talk about how the curse came about. So far last week we did not talk about the curse. It was simply what Maharaj Parikshit had done, and then that's it. So now in this continuation from verses 32 onwards, we will continue the story. So it continues like this. The sage, after Maharaj Parikshit had left to his palace, right? Now, and after that incident had happened, this sage, Saimika Rishi, he had a son who was very powerful. So he's called here Ati Tejasvi. Ati means very, Tejasvi means very powerful. Tejasvi means this power is due to his Brahminical austerities. So this kind of Brahminical Tejas power, being a Brahmana's son. And while he was playing with his childish friends, he heard of his father's distress. He heard of what has happened to his father. Somehow he came to know that Maharaj Parikshit had visited Samika Rishi, his father, and when he left, he had put a dead snake on the neck of the father. So when he heard this, he became very upset. So, and then and there, the boy spoke as follows. This is what happens. The Brahmana's son, Shringi, so that's the name of the son of the Samika Rishi. He was saying, oh, just look at the sins of the rulers who, like crows and watchdogs at the door, perpetrate sins against their masters, contrary to the principles governing servants. So he was very, very caustic in his speech. So Shringi was very puffed up. So he was very into his Brahmana heritage, and he was thinking that Kshatriyas were all lower people, that they are Brahmanas, that they are therefore the highest caste and everything, and Kshatriyas, they are so impudent to behave in this way. So he thought this way, and he started comparing Maharaj Parikshit to crows and watchdogs. So he's saying, it's very insulting over here, right? Just look at the sins. So straight away he concluded that Maharaj Parikshit was sinful, who like crows and watchdogs at the door. So he equated Maharaj Parikshit as a watchdog at the door. So in one sense, the Kshatriyas are like watchdogs because they are the watchdogs of Dharma. They are the watchdogs of religion. So, and the Brahmanas are the upholders. They are the ones who direct the direction of religion. So that was supposed to be the role of the Brahmanas. So, but out of being extremely proud, he spoke in this manner. And he is saying, Maharaj Parikshit is behaving contrary to the principles of a servant. So a servant cannot behave in this manner, like a watchdog or a crow. He cannot behave in this manner. He goes on to explain further. The Shatra Bandhu are definitely designated as watchdogs, and they must keep themselves at the door. So he said, Shatra Bandhu. Shatra Bandhu means the friend of the Kshatriya. So another insult towards Maharaj Parikshit. He didn't even call him a Kshatriya. He considered him a Kshatriya Bandhu, a friend of the Kshatriya. So sometimes just because someone is friends with someone, they may think that they are also as qualified as that person. Just because we mix a lot, sometimes, we mix a lot with doctors or NG or whoever, and then we think we are also doctors. So, or we speak with that kind of an authority. So that is like Kshatriya Bandhu. So he considered Maharaj Parikshit not a qualified Kshatriya, in other words. And directly now he's saying, definitely designated as watchdogs, and they must keep themselves at the door. They must behave properly as servants of the higher caste of the Brahmanas. On what grounds can dogs enter the house and claim to dine with the master on the same plate? You can see the nature of this Shringi. right? How he is speaking and how he's speaking is revealing his mind. Hmm? So such an exalted personality as Maharaj Parikshit, without understanding the glory of Maharaj Parikshit, he is speaking in this manner. And then he continues. After the departure of Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead and supreme ruler of everyone, these upstarts have flourished, our protector being gone. So this Sringi, he is lamenting as if he is so righteous. He is saying that, after Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead, has gone, all these other kings and everybody, they have all taken advantage of the situation and they have behaved in a terrible manner. So he is likening Parikshit Maharaj as a third-class king. Therefore, I shall take up this matter and punish them. Just witness my balam. No, my balam means my power. Just witness my power. So you can see how puffed up Shringi is. So in this way, continues, the son of the Rishi, his eyes red hot with anger, touched the water of the river Kaushika, because the river was flowing nearby, while speaking to his playmates, and discharged Vak Vajram. So Vak Vajram means he discharged speech which is hard like thunderbolt. So he spoke words which are as hard as thunderbolts. So this is the Brahmana preparing to curse. So when Brahmanas prepare to curse, they will purify themselves by touching water, and then they will take their Brahmana thread and they will hold it and they will utter the curse. So in this way, and when they utter their curse, they lose their tejas, their Brahminical power. It's like a potential energy which they keep within themselves. And when they utter, each time they utter curses, this potential energy is depleted. So that's what happens. So Brahmanas, they are not supposed to behave like this. So this is a misuse of their tejas. The Brahmana's son cursed the king thus: on the 7th day from today, Takshaka will bite the most wretched one of that dynasty. So this is the curse which he uttered. And this curse, he is calling upon Takshaka, the king of the serpents, and to come and bite and kill this king. And he considered this king as a Kula Angaram, wretched amongst the dynasty. Like the black sheep of the family, they will say. So it's like the wretched of the dynasty, the weakest link. So in that way, he is designating Maharaj Parikshit. Vaishnava Aparat. So not only insulting a pure devotee, that also a Mahabhagavat, Vishnu Ratha, blaspheming him, speaking things which are not true. Blaspheme, by the way, means to speak things which are not true and with the idea of hurting that person. So this is what he did. Example of a perfect blasphemy. And not only that, he had topped it up with the curse on top of that. And this is Takshaka. So an example of a snake. Prabhupada translates it as a snake bird. So a flying snake. So which is simply scary to see that. Because of his having broken the laws of etiquette, Maryadam, by insulting Druham, my father. So he considered Maharaj Parikshit as a Drohi, one who has caused insult upon his father by not following the rules of etiquette. So this is also valid. So that's why etiquette is very important, right? So sometimes devotees may get, make the mistake of not following etiquette properly, and therefore they may inadvertently commit offenses. So therefore it is necessary to know what is the right etiquette in behavior. So nevertheless, this is not the right example because what he was saying wasn't true. So he just from hearsay and conjecture, without investigating the matter deeply, he came to a rash conclusion and straight away gave vent to his lower, baser nature, which is to immediately curse out of his pride. Thereafter, when the boy returned to the ashram, he saw a snake on his father's shoulder. So he didn't realize there was a snake on his father's shoulder. He only heard about it. He only heard that this happened. And then when he went home and he still saw the snake on his father's shoulder like this, the sight of it hurt his pride in such a way that he cried out in grief very loudly. So Prabhupada gives some purports in all these points that we have meant, all these verses that we have heard so far. So due to Maharaj Parikshit's good government, even a boy of tender age who was playing with other inexperienced boys could become as powerful as a qualified Brahmana. So Prabhupada is trying to mention that if at all the Brahmin, it's like a cycle, you know, this Varna ashram. So the Varna, although the Brahmanas are the head, right? The head of, it's like in a body, the head is like the Brahmana. The arms are like the Kshatriya. The arms and the upper body is like a Kshatriya. And the stomach is like the Vaishya. And the legs and the feet are like the Shudra. So all are important in a proper function of a human body in order for him to achieve his destiny, right? So just a moment. Okay, Hare Krishna. So he's saying that the very fact that there is such Brahmanas, the caliber of such Brahmanas within the kingdom indicates that the kings were performing their duties very well. Because if the kings did not perform their duties very well, such Brahmanas will not be able to, Dharma will not be upheld. Because Brahmanas cannot uphold Dharma. They can direct Dharma, but they do not, their role is not to defend or protect. So that is given to the Kshatriyas. So by Kshatriyas protecting Dharma, the Brahmanas are also protected. And because the Brahmanas are protected, they become more and more powerful, and they are able to have such capabilities. So Prabhupada is saying it is due to, thanks to Maharaj Parikshit being such a great king, that such Brahmanas of such caliber were there during the time. So this is also an indication, right? So in order to develop society, all the four limbs are important. It's not that there should only be Brahmanas. There should also be Kshatriyas to defend Dharma. And there should be Vaishyas to nourish the society. And there should be Shudras to execute the duties of the various aspects of society. So then, Prabhupada continues. But, however, by the influence of Kali, the son of a Brahmana became puffed up with Brahminical power. So this is how Kali was able to infiltrate. So pride is a very, very dangerous and serious falling. So a Brahmana is not supposed to have pride. So, and this Shringi being an inexperienced child and being too puffed up with tejas, so he became, you know, in this manner, and thereby he opened the door for Kali to enter into him. So this is what happens. Therefore, whenever we behave, Kali represents quarrel, hypocrisy, and all these negative qualities, right? Like anger, kama, krodha, lobha. So every time we behave in this manner, we indulge in these qualities, we open the doors for Kali to enter and take control of our destiny. So this is what, and usually the Brahmanas will not allow this to happen. All the other Brahmanas were they know how a Brahmana is said to be very careful in controlling his anger and controlling his pride, because these two are nemesis to the Brahmana. They cannot allow this to come in. When the moment a Brahmana becomes proud and the moment a Brahmana becomes angry, he loses his status as a Brahmana. So that is how one can identify a Brahmana. So in this way, Kali was able to infiltrate. So Kali is always looking to destroy the society. Kali has a goal. He has a plan. His plan is to bring about the degradation of society. And to bring about the degradation of society, he cannot attack the Shudras because the Shudras are protected by the Vaishyas. He cannot attack the Vaishyas because the Vaishyas are also protected by the Kshatriyas. He cannot attack the Kshatriyas because by the powers of the Brahmanas, by the direction, the expert guidance of the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas are also well protected. All the bad Kshatriyas have already been killed by Krishna during the Mahabharata war. So what remains was only the pure Kshatriya kings. So therefore, when you want to shoot and kill at the first shot, right, you aim for the head, right? So when you aim for the head, so the head of society are the Brahmanas. So by shooting the head of the society, then in this way, the entire body will collapse. So, and the head was very strong. It couldn't be shot because all the Brahmanas were very wonderful, except this one child, this inexperienced Brahmana who became too powerful for his own good at a very early age and thereby opened the door for Kali to enter, to infiltrate. The king is certainly the watchdog of the state in the sense that he keeps vigilant eyes over the border of the state for its protection and defense. But to address him as a watchdog is the sign of a less cultured boy. So remember how this boy was referring to Maharaj Parikshit as a watchdog. The inexperienced boy gave a chance for the age of Kali to enter into the field of Vedic culture. Hatred of the lower orders of life began from this Brahmana boy. So it started like this. This is the beginning of the fall down of society. It began with the fall down of the Brahmana class. So the Brahmana class failed society. Of course, it wasn't possible to do that because they were fully protected by Maharaj Parikshit, such a great personality and a pure devotee of the Lord. But it was the will of the Lord. The will of the Lord was that Kali Yuga has its way. It's the time for Kali to take place. And Maharaj Parikshit, being a pure devotee of the Lord, had perfectly checkmated Kali. Kali couldn't move anywhere. He was perfectly checkmated. So the Lord had to create a new method. He had to, therefore, he had to, no choice but to use the Yoga Maya Shakti to bewilder Parikshit Maharaj and to bewilder Samika Rishi. And in this way allow this to happen. He tried to explain away his father's inhospitality in an impertinent manner befitting an uncultured boy. So hospitality is very, very important. So it is said that even if an enemy were to visit one's house, one has to treat the enemy in such a way that as if he forgets that we are his enemy, that he feels as if we are his friends. So in other words, the treatment has to be so good, the treatment of the guest. So minimum, at least offer a seat, water, or and also sweet words of welcome. If one is not able, if one is very poor, that one is not able to, ideally one should offer the best in the house to the guest. So inhospitality is a very grave sin. And it's not Samika Rishi's nature to be inhospitable also. He was a wonderful Brahmana. But due to the Maya, the Yoga Maya energy of the Lord, Samika Rishi was fully in trance and he wasn't able to wake up from his trance when Maharaj Parikshit came. Right? So that was the problem. But this boy, right, he ignored the slight of inhospitality, which is very, very integral in Vedic culture, and instead looked at the flaw of the other person. So, this is common in Kali Yuga. We ignore our own problems. We ignore our own failings, and we are very, very eager to point out the failings of others. Like even Jesus said, right? Bara, the or there's the germ across the sea we ignore. No, the germ across the sea we can see very clearly, but the stone which is right in front of our eyes, which is between our eyelids, blocking our vision, that we are blind to. I'm not saying it so elegantly. Lord Jesus, he said it much more elegantly. Okay, but anyway, that's the point. So this is the nature of Kali. So he was not at all sorry for the kings not being well received. On the contrary, he justified the wrong act in a way characteristic of the brahmanas of Kali Yuga. So this is another flaw in human society, especially in Kali Yuga. Justification. We like to justify our failings. We like to justify our shortcomings. We like to give excuses in various ways. So, I became angry because, he spoke like that to me. He shouldn't have spoken like that to me. So that's justification. Worry not about other person's conduct. Worry about our own duty. Are we carrying out our conduct and our duty as per what is required from us? So too frequently we like to take excuses. So this is another quality of Kali Yuga. Thus, the downfall of the Brahminical powers began as they gave importance to birthright without culture. So his entire argument, this Shringi's entire argument, he didn't have an argument. The father was inhospitable, period, finish. And there was no right for him, for them to get angry. Brahmana shouldn't get upset, shouldn't get angry, right? So he ignored these things, and rather he took pride in his birthright. I'm a Brahmana, my father is a Brahmana, Samika Rishi. How dare this lower caste come and treat my father in such a manner? So in this way, he is the first to start this. So thus the downfall of the Brahminical powers began as they gave importance to birthright without culture. So birthright alone, Janma karma, Guna karma. Bhagavad Gita 4 chapter 4, it says the varna, the nature of the person is determined based on guna and karma, nature and activities, not janma and karma. So whereas this Brahmana, this Shringi, he took pride in this. And since Brahmanas are the heads of the social order, all other orders of society also began to deteriorate. Now, when the head is not thinking straight, then that begins the destruction of the body, correct? Because then the head does not know how to direct the body in the right direction. So the head will cause the body to walk over a cliff and drop off. So this is what happens. And this is the plan of Kali. This is how Kali planned the downfall of the social orders, the topsy-turvy nature of, to make everything topsy-turvy in Kali Yuga. So then Prabhupada continues, Maharaj Parikshit gave license to Kali to live in 4 places as mentioned herein before. But by this very expert government, the personality of Kali could hardly find the places allotted him. So Maharaj Parikshit, if you remember previously, he checked Kali. He was so expert that Kali, the moment he glanced at Parikshit, he realized, I have no way I'm going to overcome this person. He's just too powerful. So immediately he gave up his guise as a king, right? And he straight away took mercy. He asked for mercy because he knows that's the only way I can escape. Otherwise, I'm doomed. But still, Parikshit gave him that mercy. And at the same time, he checkmated him. So this is another important matter. One simply cannot be merciful and in the name of mercy, create himsa to other people. So one should take example of Parikshit Maharaj. Sometimes we are so, okay, this person has behaved like that. Okay, imagine we have a child abuser or a child molester in society. And then we are merciful to the child molester. Oh, yo, pity him. He's only 20 something years old. He has not learned anything. Oh, okay, let's give him a chance. So that is mercy, but is that justice? Certainly it's not justice. And on top of that, we are opening the doors to further degradation. He is not going to stop there. He's going to continue only. So this is the problem. People in Kali Yuga do not understand. So they mix up mercy with justice. So here's a perfect example of Parikshit Maharaj. Though he gave mercy, he was also able to perfectly check Kali. So the personality of Godhead, therefore, was seeking the opportunity to establish, the personality of Kali, therefore, was seeking the opportunity to establish authority. And by the grace of the Lord, he found a hole in the puffed up, inexperienced son of a Brahmana. So this is very important, by the grace of the Lord. So it's all part of the plan of the Lord. Kali Yuga is part of the plan of the Lord. The degradation of this age is supposed to happen because Krishna is like cooking barfi, he's pouring milk and then he's cooking barfi, and then in Satya Yuga, when you cook barfi, you sit and wait until the milk thickens, and then in Treta Yuga, the milk thickens a bit more, so the time is a bit shorter. And then in Dwapara, some more thicker. And then in Kali Yuga, he increases he's like, I don't want to wait for hundreds and thousands of years. I want all of you to quickly come back to me. So let me increase the heat a bit more so that you all will, quickly realize the situation of this material world and take up the dharma which is given to purify yourself and come back to me. So this is the eagerness of the Lord. So this is all part of his plan. So in Kali couldn't do anything unless the Lord allowed it, because his pure devotee perfectly checked him. So by the grace of the Lord, Kali found a hole in the puffed up, inexperienced son of a Brahmana. So the Brahmana's son became an instrument. So we can also choose to be instruments. We can either choose to be instrument of the Lord's will, or we can choose to be instrument of Kali's will, right? So this is where it's either. We cannot, there's no in between. There is either one only. So we have the choice. So this is the puffed up son of the Brahmana. Now this Brahmana, Prabhupada continues, he wanted to take the place of Lord Krishna. Remember the words he used? Just see, I will now show my power. I will personally now teach this fella a lesson. So this boy, this upstart, he is the real upstart, not who he claimed Parikshit to be. He wanted to take the place of Lord Krishna after his departure. These are the principal signs of upstarts who want to take the place of Sri Krishna under the influence of the age of Kali. An upstart with a little power wants to become an incarnation of the Lord. So then thus the beginning of the misuse of Brahminical power. So this is misuse of Tejas, right? Began. And gradually the Brahmanas in the age of Kali became devoid of both Brahminical power and culture. And in the same stroke, another group of society arose and started to take advantage of this situation. They started to persecute the Brahmanas. So therefore, we also see in India, the Brahminical society is also being persecuted. So anyway, so this is all part of the karmic arrangement. So then the verse continues. Sutta Goswami continues, O Brahmanas, the Rishi who was Angira Shaha. So this Samika Rishi is from the family of Angira Muni. So Angira, he's a great personality. It's not a normal personality also. Hearing his son crying, he finally came out of his trance, gradually opened his eyes and saw the dead snake, Mrita Uragam, the dead Uragam, snake around his neck. He threw the snake aside and asked his son why he was crying, whether anyone had done him any harm. On hearing this, the son explained to him what happened. He spoke about how Maharaj Parikshit came, and then how the dead snake came to be on his neck, and how Shringi had taken vengeance and cursed Parikshit Maharaj. The father heard from his son that the king had been cursed, although he should never have been condemned. So the king is known as Atat Arham, right? That means he cannot be condemned. He is immune to the laws. He cannot be condemned because he is considered as good as God almost. He was Nara Indram, the king amongst the leader amongst the Indras amongst human beings. So, it's like he's immune to local laws. So, nowadays we have this saying, no one's above the law. But in those days, the kings were above the law, and they had to be above the law, because sometimes the king had to do certain things which are sometimes necessary. And the kings never took advantage of this situation. Because we know the volatility of this situation, the Brahmanas were very careful to ensure that the king is a perfect king, a Raja Rishi, who's perfectly trained and who would never take advantage of situations. And this is also to allow for any mistakes the king might commit. So sometimes, there might be mistakes. So just because of a mistake, he should not be put under the law for that and punished for this situation. Because to get such a qualified king is not an easy thing. He's the king, Nara Indram. It's like it's a 1 in a million character. Someone who is capable militarily to such a high caliber, someone who is in morality also of such high caliber. To find someone of that combination is not so easy. So that clearly 1 in a million. So we cannot afford to have the king to be killed over something trivial or some mistake, right? The bigger picture has to be understood. So therefore, he's known as Atat Arham, for he was Nara Indram, never to be condemned. The Rishi did not congratulate his son, but on the contrary began to repent, saying, alas, what a great sinful act, Mahat Papam, right? What a great sinful act was performed by my son. He has awarded heavy punishment, Uru Damaha, heavy punishment for an Alpiyasi Drohi. That means a very insignificant mistake. So certainly it was a mistake. Why the mistake happened is a different story, right? As we know, Parikshit Maharaj was not capable of making such a mistake. He is so careful. He is coming from the dynasty of Yudhishthira Maharaj, grandson of Arjuna, right? Personally protected by the Lord, not capable of making such mistakes. So it is by the will of the Lord only. For example, even in the Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says, right, my devotees, if they commit some mistakes, still they are to be considered as saintly. So therefore, what more to speak about the king of the world, Nara Indram, right? And someone of the caliber of Parikshit Maharaj, Vishnu Ratha. So for such an insignificant thing that he just took a snake and put on my neck, for that you have cursed him and condemned him to die in 7 days. And thereby you have done the world a huge disservice. So, oh my boy, your intelligence is immature. Apikava buddhe. Buddhe means intelligence. Avipakwa. Immature, not developed. And therefore you have no knowledge that the king is Nara Devam, Parakyam, the best among human beings and as good as God. He is never to be placed on an equal footing with common men. The citizens of the state, why? Because the citizens of the state live in prosperity, being protected by his unsurpassable prowess. Only by his prowess that the citizens are able to live in prosperity and in peace. If you curse such a king to die, you have cursed the kingdom. You have cursed the world, because Maharaj Parikshit was the king of the entire world. So Prabhupada said, in other words, the king can do no wrong, right? This is the caliber and the stature as per the monarchy system. So that's why in those days, the monarchy system worked, because they had perfect kings like Lord Ramachandra, who could do no wrong, like Yudhishthira Maharaj, right? Like Parikshit Maharaj. But unfortunately, with Kali Yuga's advent, the Brahmanas became degraded, and therefore they do not know how to train Kshatriyas properly to become king. So therefore, we saw the fall down of monarchy also within the modern days, and where the kings became greedy and took advantage and everything and all that. So there is a solution. The solution is to again ensure Brahminical society is strengthened. Again, to bring back the way back is to again put a head on the, when Ganesh was decapitated, the solution was to again put a new head on Ganesh, right? So therefore, when the Brahmanas are destroyed in Kali Yuga, therefore the main thing which is necessary for this world is to re-establish Brahminical culture. With re-establishment of Brahminical culture, Kshatriyas will again be able to lead and manage and protect as per the requirements of the Brahminical, as per the directions of the qualified Brahmanas. And in this way, society can be re-established. So that's why ISKCON's one of the seven objectives of ISKCON, seven missions of ISKCON, right? One of it is to propagate Vedic culture and to establish Brahminical society. So by education, by giving Bhagavad Gita and all that, that is one thing. So the king may order, for example, hanging of a culprit son of a Brahmana, but he does not become sinful for killing a Brahmana, although the son of the Brahmana may be a very bad culprit. So sometimes he is a judge. As a judge, he has to order the death of some people. And even if the person is so-called a Brahmana, he has to order that Brahmana's death. Does that mean the king becomes implicated for killing a Brahmana? So therefore, the law of Manu is perfect. And the law of Manu indicates that the king is above the laws. He cannot do any wrong. And what happens when he does? So then the Brahmanas will come and depose him. And this happened before also, even in a previous age, right? During the reign of King Vena, the Bhagavatam will describe, right? When King Vena was so sinful, the Brahmanas came and they dethroned him. Because by the powers of the blessings of the Brahmanas, only the kings became, they were able to rule. Just like a medical practitioner may kill a patient by mistaken treatment, but such a killer is never condemned to death. Because if we start killing all doctors, right? So the point is, of course, one is not meant to make mistakes, but we are saying that it should be, there should be an allowance. There should be an indication. There should be somewhere a leeway for people to, it doesn't mean that we are encouraging mistakes to happen wantonly. That's not the idea. But we are talking here about a perfect king in a perfect system guided by Brahmanas. My dear boy, the Lord who carries the wheel of a chariot is represented by the monarchical regime. So the king is like the representation of the Supreme Lord himself on earth, right? This concept is also there in the Muslims. They also say Khalifa, right? Like the representative of God, king upon the earth. So Prabhupada says, an ideal king, thoroughly trained by culture and devotional service with godly qualities, with the martial spirit, makes a perfect king. So such a king was Parikshit Maharaj. And when this regime is abolished, the whole world becomes filled with thieves. So this is what is happening in Kali Yuga at the moment. This is already predicted. So Samika Rishi is telling his son, you have now condemned the world in this path. When this regime is abolished, when such a qualified king is deposed or killed, then who is going to protect? Then what will happen? Many people are there waiting to take advantage. These are the thieves, the chaura. The chauras are waiting to take advantage of their fellow human beings, guided and fed by Kali, because this is Kali's plan. Kali has agents in all this human population, right? So, and this human population, the agents are just waiting for the loosening of the system. The moment there is a weakness, right? Just like, jackals, if a pack of hyenas and lions, lions will go and kill the prey, and they will eat and they will guard it. And jackals are waiting outside. They don't dare to steal the food from the lion. But the moment they see any kind of weakness, if one lion is shown to be slightly weak, it's had a wound, it's not able to stand, then the hyenas and the jackals will close in, waiting to take advantage. So this is what's happening, right? Capitalism. So capitalism is the key word of Kali Yuga. Capitalism means Kali. So here, where you can enslave fellow, what's capitalism? Where you can enslave fellow humans and rape the planet and be praised for your good business sense. This is basically capitalism. So there's nothing to stop them. There is no good sense to halt. It's fueled by greed. And these people you see, killing a king, a society cannot be leaderless. Somehow there will be someone to lead the society. And these are the types of people who will take their place. They will be the politicians who will rob the people and steal their money. So Prabhupada says, everyone captures the post for personal sense gratification. So therefore, all these situations arise. So, in the name of capitalism, nowadays we have many orders in the world. So like for the Western orders, so they come under the garb of capitalism and they take control of these situations. So Prabhupada said, the thieves and rogues of modern democracy seek election by misrepresentation of votes, and the successful rogues and thieves devour the mass of population. So it's very nicely done, very nicely spoken. The thieves and rogues of modern democracy seek election by misrepresentation of votes, because it's basically the foolish who are voting for the foolish, the blind leading the blind. So if you ask 10 Sudras who should be the leader, the Shudra will never choose the Brahmana, because the Shudra will only choose another Shudra because I can see eye to eye, I can understand. So that's the problem. So it's the Brahmanas who should choose the king, because they know the real goal of life and what is important, whereas the Shudras don't. So this is the failing of the democratic movement. So the state is an institution of theft, government of the people, by the people, right? And when the people try to protest, well, they hide behind you can see this happening, especially the last few years, and we will see this happening until probably 2025 and all, at least. It's like there's some predictions and all that 2020 to 2025 and beyond, a lot of things will come into view. A lot of so-called conspiracies like this one will actually show their face. So anyway, how do they do this? How do these people in those days, they just took over, barbarians and all that. Eventually they took over the state. But nowadays it's not so easy to do this. So therefore, the greedy people, the capitalist, the groups, this group particularly, they take advantage of propaganda. The power of propaganda. Propaganda is very, very powerful. Propaganda is an art of lying which often deceives its supporters more rather than the opponents. What does that mean? It means that it is able to say things in such a way that the people themselves will start repeating the same propaganda, and they will do the work for them. Just say something. Basically, propaganda is saying the same things again and again and again until it just enters into the mind, right? So this is done by all governments, including Malaysia, in various aspects, and it's been going on for ages. And especially during the First World War and the Second World War particularly, this particular psychological tool became very popular. So you can see the father of propaganda. This is Edward Bernays. He is one of the ministers of Hitler in his cabinet. He was the communications minister. If we understand the mechanism and motives of the group mind, it is now possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without them knowing it. So this is the secret of propaganda, and is called the father of propaganda. Propaganda works best when those who are being manipulated are confident that they are acting on their own free will. So you can see, nowadays, so a lot of people, in the name of vaccination, for example, they are very quick to go and attack other people who have hesitancy, forgetting that they may have valid reasons or whatever. So anyway, so whatever our goals may be, we should not forget humanity. So this is seen nowadays, and it's not done by the government. The government have pushed the buttons of propaganda, but the people are continuing the wave. So it's very deplorable that people behave in such a way. So by the this is Hitler, by the skillful and sustained use of propaganda, one can make a people see even heaven as hell or an extremely wretched life as paradise. So, and another quote here, propaganda is as powerful as heroin. It is surreptitiously dissolves all capacity to think. And this is the father of propaganda, the Nazi propaganda minister, right? Let me control the media and I will turn any nation into a herd of pigs. So these are all historical statements. And this has been used very much by the proponents of capitalism, by various groups. And in this way, they control even governments. So like that, this is happening in Kali Yuga, simply due to the lack of a strong king like Parikshit Maharaj. For example, rise in global arm trade. So you will see how from 1960, from 10 billion spending went to 46 billion in 1982. So, and then after that, the spending dropped a little because the world was at peace for some time. And then it dropped to an all-time low, which was in 2002, and they couldn't accept that. So therefore, they have to create artificial, the 7-Eleven, or 9/11, sorry, not 7/11, 9/11 situation and a few other situations. And then we had the war on terror, the Iraq, and then the jihad, and then the IS threats. One would wonder, anyway, we don't want to go into deeply into those things, but this is basically propaganda. And then they push the idea of the world is being overpopulated, too much population in the world cannot take it unless something is done. So this is another rubbish propaganda. 7.9 billion people, 95% of them occupy only 10% of the land of this world. So this overpopulation is a myth, and enough food is there to feed 10 billion people, and easily we have the capacity to double that by sustainable farming. So this nonsense of food security and so-called water security, these are all propagandas which are being created by various groups, capitalists, basically capitalists. Why? Because they want to enjoy the world with minimal, they want to continue this situation.
And to solve this so-called problem, they create businesses for themselves, genetically modified crops, with the idea that this will solve the food security issue. And this, we don't want to go into too deeply into those things, but this is pushed by governments, particularly in the US and in Asia. This is in Asia Pacific. We have governments who have genetically modified crops in order to save labor, in order to save, and at the same time, they push propaganda machine and they buy off scientific community. And in this way, they are able to convince the masses that it is safe. So why talk about genetically modified crops? We have genetically modified people nowadays. So government, big pharma, and the people, a century of disease. So what does that mean? Now, before I go into that, food security, that's another thing about food security. The capitalists want to enjoy meat industry. So the main problem with the so-called scarcity of the poor people in the world is due to the meat industry. Would you believe that 50% of all food grown in the world, particularly grains, are fed to livestock, and only 20% is actually used for human consumption? 30% goes to biofuel. Nowadays, they grow corn, they grow sugarcane, they grow wheat just to produce fuel, biofuel. And this is being claimed as, oh, this is the new way to clear, we don't have to have wastage. But that's not really the case. In the name of doubling profits in wastage, there are now places in the world where they are specifically growing crops 90% to only produce biofuels, and they are destroying rainforests for this. And this is one of the problems. 50% goes to livestock feeding, to feed the cows and the animals so that they can grow fat and they can be killed and they can have nice, fat, juicy meat. So this is again propaganda. Same thing goes with pharmaceuticals, right? So we have many things like this. The big pharma conspiracy, many books, many things are there. The truth about drug companies. Well, what is this truth about drug companies and what they do to deceive us? So it basically takes about 8 years to bring a drug from lab to pharmacy. So how they do? They, instead of selling a drug, they sell disease. Step 1, create a condition or redefine an existing condition, or just to reduce the stigma, or to elevate the importance of an existing condition, right? Oh, repackage it. It's like new wine in old wine in new bottles. So come up with new. They have scientists who are. I'm a scientist, so I know. So they have hijacked basically the what do you call, the scientific community. If you see, scientific misconduct is amongst the highest in the rising, and it's there. And they create new conditions, redefine existing condition, elevate the importance of. That's why nowadays you see we have a lot of wellness. In the name of wellness, they lure people to take up expensive packages of so-called wellness, where there'll be a team of doctors who will look at you and they will say, oh, you very nicely, they will welcome you, they will give you a drink, they will give you nice situations, and then they will tell you, oh, you have this, high cholesterol a bit, or you have this something, better you go for a test, better you go for an x-ray, so clear it quickly so that we can so in this way. And then they put you on a routine of drugs, and these routines of drugs, for example, cholesterol lowering disease, they don't tell you that it destroys the liver within 30 years, and they do not tell you that like that. It goes on. There are many things. We don't want to go into those things. So after you create the condition, market the symptoms instead of the drug. So this is what's happening. Wellness, awareness, doctors talk, insurances, they take all these things. They will create. Why would insurance people be so bothered to create awareness of diseases? Are they so beneficial? Are they so worried about our disease? Are they so worried about us? And it's a lot of money they have to spend. So and there's proof. I'm going to show you the proof. Partisan breakdown of pharmaceutical industry contributions. 6.6 billion of amount of US dollars is being given by pharmaceutical companies given to Democratic candidates, and 7 billion or so given to Republican candidates. Why would pharmaceutical companies do this? So that, and why give to these people? So we just have to think a little and we will get the answers. So therefore, the third one is offer pills to cure the disease and you have a blockbuster. That's the way propaganda works. Who then at once vanquish? So these rogues and thieves who have taken over the governments, right? Who then at once vanquish the unprotected subjects like scattered lambs. The word is avi varuta. Bhagavatam calls the masses like scattered lambs. They are called scattered lambs because they have been fed by the propaganda of the government and they have become weak. So they run bleating in fear, spouting back the government rhetoric which they have been fed in their schools all their lives. So this is Maya. Have you all seen the picture Matrix? If you have seen the picture Matrix in the 80s, you can get an idea of how things work. All this may sound like conspiracy theory, but the last 2 years, and we will see more, we have actually seen how the faces of these conspiracy theories are now coming into light. So, so like that, there are many genetically engineered bio pandemic. So these are conspiracies, but no smoke without fire. And look deep enough and you might actually see the fire. So Prabhupada says, one trained monarch is far better than hundreds of useless ministerial rogues. And it is hinted herein that by abolition of a monarchical regime like that of Maharaj Parikshit, the mass of people become open to many attacks of the age of Kali. Due to the termination of the monarchical regimes and the plundering of the people's wealth by rogues and thieves, so again it's repeated, by rogues and thieves, right? And we are in the midst of Kali Yuga. So you can say, court rules against juries, 88% in cases against corporate defendants. This is in the US, right? So we can see how justice is no longer blind. It is being prodded by politicians. Why? Because you see here, pharmaceutical companies, they have lobbied against politicians. Capitalists, basically the capitalists, that they have controlled the politicians of the world, especially the West. And in this way, they are controlling the policies which govern the world as well. Mentioned this before, example of one. So there will be great social disruptions as a result of all this. So we are already seeing that. Never before we have seen so much of social disruptions. Actually, there were, it was just not displayed sufficiently due to tight media control and propaganda. So nowadays with internet age, it's not so easy, but still you will find that certain things are not, you cannot find in mainstream channels. So anyway, this is there. There will be great social disruptions. So like this, we can find a lot of issues going on. Vaccine passport issues, other fellow neighbors, family members turning against each other over vaccine situations, right? This happens. People, the Janaha, will be killed and injured, and animals and women will be stolen. So we've seen this also, right? The recent cases in the US, the killing of the Floyd, the black man who was killed under police custody. We are seeing that in Malaysia also. It's just that, we are not like the blacks. So we are rather docile because we have been fed the slaughterhouse education system of Malaysia. So, and we find that anyway, we are more cultured also. So we have different ways and we can see this happening. So killer cops. And for all these sins, we shall be responsible. So Samika Rishi is lamenting, "Oh, my son, oh Shringi, what have you done?" So this is the beginning of the fall of Kali Yuga. And then he continues, at that time, when all this has happened, the people in general, because the people are to be guided. Maharaj Parikshit was guiding the purpose of all these things, the purpose of society, the purpose of Brahmanas, the purpose of Kshatriyas, the purpose of the Varnashrama Dharma is to progressively guide society towards God realization. But when we have cheats, when we have leaders who are like this, they will systematically, the people in general will fall systematically because they do not have guidance already. When the rule of the world is capitalism, first person gets it. The early worm gets the morning. The early bird gets the morning worm. When that is the rule of the law of this world, right? So people in general will fall systematically from the path of a progressive civilization in respect to the qualitative engagements of Varna and Ashram and the Vedic injunctions. So then we will have, this is all part of the capitalism concepts. So female liberation, if you study the history of how this all started, it's not because the governments were so pro and they were so concerned and worried about ladies being ill-treated that they wanted to enforce female freedom. It was mainly a very simple reason. They just thought, okay, after the war, right, we need to, the economy, the new world order, economical development, capitalism, America was leading the way, right? How can we double our GDP? Because GDP is very much due to the how many people are working. So one person came up with the brilliant suggestion, can we get all the wives at home and all the mothers to join the workforce? When that happens, we practically overnight double the GDP. So therefore, propaganda machine started, female empowerment rose up, and they started looking at all the ill-trodden cases of all the women who had suffered in domestic abuse and so that, and then they highlighted it to such an extent and used it as moral feeding ground to push the propaganda machine. And eventually, what did this lead to? It led to abortion is a right. So these are these ladies who start claiming abortion. So it led to exploitation when women who were protected and who were taking up very beautifully the family role of guiding children in the right direction. A child is, if the child is not brought up properly, it's going to be Varna Shankara, as good as Varna Shankara. So it is necessary for that. But anyway, so then eventually it led to what do you call, exploitation of women. So with this idea, then the person who came up with this female liberation was not a woman, by the way. It's a group of men. So this group of men wanted to exploit. Why is it we should have only one wife? Why not we give the right to the ladies? So that way we can have many. We don't have to get married. So then the women were then fed the propaganda that it's your right, it's your body. You are a human being. In your body, you should have the right. So therefore came about abortion is health care. So it's no longer just right, it's health care. So it's now fed that way. So this is again propaganda. And like this is one aspect of propaganda. So like that, society is systematically in the losing direction. And then we have the LGBTQ society. Yes, we should all be equal to them. But does that mean that they can take families? We have nowadays LGBTQ society who adopt children and bring up children. So they have father and father. wife, husband, father, and wife, father, or husband, wife, and wife, husband, or it gets very complicated at that point. So that they do not understand between human rights on what is basic understanding of human rights and going across the line. Thus, they will be more attracted to artha. So in this way, when LGBTQ is opened, what do we see LGBTQ nowadays? When we look at LGBTQ, we see gay pride. And if you look at pictures of gay pride, you do not see high intellectuality. You see downright sense gratification, hedonism. Most people are going about half naked in the name of pushing gay rights, right? And therefore, Bhagavatam says, thus they will be more attracted to artha, karma, economic development for sense gratification. You will find capitalists who are the ones who are benefiting. And then you have all kinds of things, official nudist beach and all this whatever, and all becomes a right. And as a result, there will be Varna Shankara on the level of dogs and monkeys. Sunam Kapinam. Sunam means dogs, Kapi means monkey. So in this way, society will degrade to this level. So therefore, now we have, worldwide deaths, right? So this was in 2020. COVID flu was 46,000. Seasonal flu, deaths due to seasonal flu was 121,000, which nobody made any noise, which was consistently there every year. And anyway, then there was malaria, suicide, 270,000 due to the ill effects of capitalism. Traffic fatalities, which is easily almost 9 times what COVID was at that time, which nobody raised a hat about. HIV and AIDS, which is easily, so much of deaths. Alcoholism, which was being publicized in billboards and news and mainstream media. Smoking, almost double that of alcoholism. Cancer. Hunger beats all of this flat. 2.8 million in 2020 deaths due to hunger, which nobody turned a hat about. And finally, look at abortion. 10.6 million deaths a year. This was in 2020. So this is propaganda for you. So a degraded civilization of sense gratification and economic development is the byproduct of a godless or kingless government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So in other words, a government of Shudras, by the Shudras, for the Shudras. The Shudras should not therefore begrudge the Shudraic administration they themselves elect. So that's Prabhupada's statement. So this is all basically masterminded by the capitalist. So the Narapati Parikshit, sorry, the time, going ahead. I'm going to finish soon. 4 more verses, okay? The Narapati Parikshit, and then Samika Rishi continues. This King Parikshit is not an ordinary king, oh my son. He is Dharmapala. He is the protector of religion. He is highly celebrated, Brihat Shravaha. He is Maha Bhagavata, a pure devotee on top of all these things. He is Raja Rishi. Amongst kings, he is saintly. And he has performed many, many horse sacrifices. Haya Medayat, which is very important. When such a king is tired and fatigued, being stricken with hunger and thirst, he does not at all deserve to be cursed. The Brahmanas, being at the head of the social orders, are meant to give protection to their subordinates. So those who are in a higher position should be merciful to those who are in a lower position. And therefore, the Brahmanas should be merciful and not curse people. So seniors should be merciful and not curse juniors, right? Or be envious of them. Then the Rishi prayed to the all-pervading personality of Godhead to pardon his immature boy, who had no intelligence and who had committed the great sin of cursing a person who was apapeshu, one who was sinless, who was subordinate subordinate to the Brahmanas. Parikshit was so subordinate to the Brahmanas and therefore deserved to be protected. So this is the qualification of one who deserves to be protected. Sinless and subordinate. Sinless and subordinate. Very important for us to remember this. We sometimes claim we deserve protection, but are we working towards this? So subordinate to authority, basically guru, right? Subordinate to saintly personalities and trying our best to be sinless. Why the Brahmana community as a whole was made, so we may ask a question, why the Brahmana community as a whole was made responsible for allowing Kali into the world? So Prabhupada answers this question. You know, it was only this boy who did this, right? But the blame goes to the entire Brahmana community still. So this is given in the Varaha Purana, the answer to this. The demons who acted inimically toward the Lord but were not killed by the Lord were allowed to take birth in the families of Brahmanas to take advantage of the age of Kali. So all the demons in Mahabharata who escaped, no, they not all were Kshatriyas, some were Vaishyas, some were other types also. So in different times also. So these demons, they all took birth as various people, as particularly Brahmanas in Kali Yuga. And therefore, they took advantage of the age of Kali. The demons, instead of utilizing the good opportunity, misused the Brahminical culture to aggrandize themselves. They gave way to their vanity. So, and in this way, right, the devotees of the Lord are so, however, you can see the contrast. The devotees of the Lord are so forbearing that even though they are defamed, cheated, cursed, disturbed, neglected, or even killed, they are never inclined to avenge themselves, although they are certainly powerful. Prabhavo apihi. So powerful, this is mentioned. So Parikshit Maharaj was certainly powerful. Kali himself gave complete leeway, and this is a small, inexperienced boy who gave a curse. Parikshit Maharaj, who was saved by Lord Vishnu from the most powerful thing in the universe, which is the Brahmastra, who could easily counter this curse or get someone to counter it for him. But what did he do? We all know what he did. We will hear about it again in the next chapter later on, next time. So Prabhupada says, Samika Rishi also knew that the Lord does not forgive a person who has committed an offense at the feet of a devotee. The Lord can only give direction to take shelter of the devotee. So therefore, Samika Rishi prayed. He prayed for the Lord to forgive on the context that he's just a small child. So kindly please excuse him. The devotee of the Lord, even though he may not be a Brahmana, is more powerful than a Brahmana. But a powerful devotee never misuses the power of for personal benefit. Whatever power the devotee may have is always utilized in service towards the Lord and his devotees only. So the sage thus regretted the sin committed by his own son. He did not take the insult paid by the king very seriously. So we know these are great personalities. Samika Rishi is also a great personality. So he didn't take it seriously. This is the nature of devotees. Devotees will never claim, you have committed Vaishnava aparat unto me. They will never claim like that. They are always forgiving, right? They do not take offense. So generally the transcendentalists, even though engaged by others in the dualities of the material world, are not distressed, nor do they take pleasure in worldly things, for they are transcendentally engaged. And Prabhupada says, the king was a devotee and the rishi was a mystic. Therefore, both of them were transcendental and they were unattached to the accidental incident created by the Lord's will. The child was but an instrument. So in this way, we have completed our chapter 18, right? All these topics we have discussed already, and how we heard Shringi cursed Maharaj Parikshit, the regret for the cursing, and what are the after effects of such a cursing, how the world, the course of direction the world will take, right? detailed discussion of how the world will degrade further is described in Canto 12, Srimad Bhagavatam. There we will see a lot of details, a lot of symptoms of how the world will degrade. Prayers for forgiveness, ultimately. So ultimately, this is what happens. So in short, to end everything, right? So the solution is basically to become a devotee, right? And to spread this message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the rest of the world. Because when we spread this message to the world, when there is a cultural revolution, then the world will change, right? By giving this spiritual culture, by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we purify the atmosphere, we purify the ether, and we are able to halt Kali, completely halt Kali. So that is the way for the golden age to appear. So this is natural, it's part of the predictions. There will be an increase until for the next few years, it's going to increase. Next 6 years or 7 years or so, it will increase. And then finally, things will start collapsing. And then the golden age will blossom out of this rubbish like a beautiful lotus flower. So this is all part and parcel of the Lord's plan, right? And Prabhupada, in the meanwhile, Prabhupada also says, right, make the best of this bad bargain. So take the best of this bad bargain. This world is like that. The people are like that. This is Kali Yuga, but Kali Yuga has this wonderful bargain where simply by taking up this devotional process, chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, by chanting this and by chanting Gaura and Nitai continuously, we can purify the atmosphere, we can change people's hearts by the power of Prasadam, by the power of the holy name, by the power of Gita, by the power of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we can take shelter of this also in such a way that we cannot be disturbed by all this. We will not be disturbed, and we will have our focus very much into our spiritual upliftment, and in this way we can become happy even in this life and eventually go back to Godhead. So with that, we'd like to end this. Thank you very much. So let us not worry about all the propaganda. Let us not worry about all the situations. We should be aware, right? We should not be in Maya, because this is all tools of Maya to basically push the capitalism agenda. So Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Dandavat Pranams. Any questions from anybody?
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Hare
I didn't know you're a scientist. Fantastic. Wow, that's nice.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So Jai Srila Prabhu. Yep.
Jai.
My sister, Prabhu. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Join that club.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Bo. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam
Jai.
ki jai.
Jai.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.